These are unprecedented times, and we are hopeful this video will help to clarify changes to Wisconsin landlord-tenant regulations in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. Before we begin, I want to introduce you to the Bureau of Consumer Protection. Located within the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection, we are the state's consumer protection agency. Our mission is to ensure fair business practices for buyers and sellers alike by prohibiting fraud, deception, and unfair business practices in the marketplace. Consumer protection regulates landlord-tenant relations. We are responsible for the enforcement of Wisconsin Administrative Code, Chapter DATCP 134, governing landlord-tenant rental practices. There have been a number of temporary changes to landlord-tenant regulations during the last few weeks. In late March, the governor issued an emergency order placing a moratorium on residential and commercial evictions for non-payment of rent. There's also been an emergency order related to the right to enter a leased property, as well as emergency rulemaking by the department related to residential rental late fees. This video will provide more detailed information on these three temporary changes. On Friday, March 27 of 2020, Emergency Order Number 15 was issued, placing a suspension or moratorium on residential and commercial evictions for non-payment of rent. The order does a couple of important things. First, landlords cannot evict a tenant for 60 days. Which will end on May 26th. During this time, no evictions can take place unless there is an imminent threat of physical harm. Otherwise, tenants cannot be evicted for non-payment of rent. This is true for residential and commercial properties. This order does not mean tenants should cease paying rent. While many tenants are experiencing extreme economic hardships during these times, tenants should continue to pay rent if they can, and we encourage landlords and tenants to work together to identify how rent payments can be made during this crisis. If temporary modifications are made to the amount and/or timing of rent payments, it's a good idea to get that new agreement in writing. Many tenants wonder if they can be evicted during the COVID-19 emergency. For eviction proceedings that started prior to March 27th of 2020, Emergency Order Number 15 prohibits the sheriff from acting on eviction orders for 60 days starting from March 27th of 2020. Other tenants have asked if a landlord can start an eviction during the COVID-19 emergency. During this time period, unless the eviction is for an imminent threat of serious physical harm to another person, landlords are prohibited from serving notice terminating a rental agreement, including a lease, commencing a civil action of eviction, delivering eviction notices to the sheriff. On Tuesday, March 24 of 2020, Emergency Order Number 12 related to Safer at Home was issued. In Section 2 of this order, landlords or rental property managers were directed to avoid entering leased residential premises unless emergency maintenance is required. On Saturday, April 25 of 2020, the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection published an emergency rule, Wisconsin Administrative Code DATCP 134.09(8) governing fees related to late rent payments. This emergency rule took effect the same day, Saturday, April 25th. The emergency rule prohibits fees for non-payment or late payment of rent during the emergency order and the 90 days following the expiration of the Governor's Executive Order Number 72. The Department will hold a public hearing on this emergency rule on Thursday, May 21, and will also accept public comments in writing until close of business on that same day, Thursday, May 21st. To file a complaint or make an inquiry related to your landlord-tenant situation, call our hotline at 1-800-422-7128 or visit our website at datcp.wi.gov, where we have more frequently asked questions on this topic and other information about COVID-19 scams. We also encourage you to contact us to report any COVID-19 related scam or fraud you may encounter. Finally, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook for the latest news about what the Bureau of Consumer Protection is doing to protect consumers. Thank you for your attention. Be well and be safe.